What's going on? What's going on? My name is James Bush, and I am one of the co-founders of Let's Have Manversation, where our mission is to initiate meaningful conversations that address the challenges that men face in the United States and worldwide. We're not just talking, we're taking action as well. At Let's Have Manversation, we strive to motivate, educate, empower, and connect men through education by building a solid and unified community. We take on issues often overlooked and overshadowed, ensuring we meet men where they are. And we invite you to join our cause to help raise awareness through targeted conversations. More on that later on in the show. But today, we're diving deep into the theme of mastering discipline for lifelong success. I have three illustrious guests with me this evening. And I mean, if I said their last names, it sounds like an attorney firm or anything like that. First, I have to the mic Dr. Hatch. Step on up, Dr. Hatch.
Good evening.
What's going on, sir? Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. Good evening, everyone watching. I am Dr. Bryle Henderson Hatch, here from Greensboro, North Carolina. Professionally, I lead diversity, equity, and inclusion for North Carolina's Health and Human Services system statewide. I also have the pleasure of serving as graduate faculty at the illustrious North Carolina Agricultural and Technical State University, where I am a three-time grad. So an unapologetic Aggie, but really excited to be here for this really important conversation.
That's what's up. That's what's up. That's what's up. Great to have you, Dr. Hatch. And our next guest is the soon-to-be PhD, Mr. Adams. Step up to the mic, sir.
Good evening, everyone. I hope everyone is doing well. I am Michael Adams. I wear many hats. The most important is servant. I am a program manager over the largest domestic violence intervention program in the state. I also hold a bachelor's from St. Augustine's University. I'm sorry, Aggie. I hold master's from Liberty University, and like they said, soon to be doctorate from Saybrook University in transformative social change. Um, I'm a servant. That's all that matters, and a proud father. Love being that.
That's all right. That's all right. And for our last featured guest this evening, and we learned from our last show, we definitely need a woman at the table. Dr. Pack, step up to the mic for us.
Amen, amen.
Tell us a little bit about yourself, Dr. Pack.
I'm Dr. Sandra Pack. I hailing from Sumter, South Carolina. I am glad to be here. I'm retired Chief Warrant Officer, been in the military for 35 years, and I'm a mother of three, and I am so glad to be on the panel tonight.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Now, Dr. Pack, you stay right there. As a retired officer, discipline must have been a cornerstone of your career, right?
Yes.
So how has discipline shaped your journey, and why do you think it is crucial for lifelong success?
Discipline starts with yourself. You have to be self-disciplined to get wherever you need to go in life. Even being in the military, discipline starts in basic training. Even though there are homes that only have one parent, homes with two parents, but discipline starts at the home. When you come in the military, you go to basic training. You don't leave basic training without discipline, because you have to pass the AFPCT to either, we call it the PT test, to get to your unit. And without discipline, you will not be able to pass the PT test. So discipline is instilled with you through basic training. To reach your goal in life, you have to have discipline. And it does start when you are young. Discipline in the military is winning a war. Discipline in the military, and you can tell when a unit is disciplined. And it starts with the youngest soldier in that unit. And when a soldier is disciplined, the unit thrives and the unit wins wars. And that's how you know when you when the unit is disciplined.
The whole of Dr. Pack, I gotta ask you quick, man, 15, 20 seconds. Again, dig deeper on that. How do you know when someone is disciplined? What are some tangible characteristics for our audience?
Tangible characteristics of discipline. Discipline starts with respect. You respect your elders.
Right.
You know how to carry yourself when you're disciplined. You know how to carry yourself. You respect your elders. You you exude the thought that you know how to go through life and know that you know the difference between right and wrong.
Mm-hmm.
You know that being disciplined takes you farther when you know where you want to go, you know how you need to get there. So you're going to be disciplined enough to know that you have to run the race to get where you need to go, to fulfill your goals, to get to the goal that you want to get to. So discipline starts young, and you have to know where you want to go to get to that goal.
That's absolutely awesome. Thank you, Dr. Pack, for that. Now, Mr. Adams, I got to jump on to you right now. Let's dive into some deeper waters. Recent statistics shows a concerning trend with youth in schools. Many struggle with discipline. What role do you think adults, the headmasters, the leaders, the models, play in instilling discipline in children?
Well, first of all, it is the one of the most important roles that adults should play in our youth lives in instilling discipline. However, there are so many nuances to what that means now. Discipline 20 years ago doesn't look the same today. There are some foundational tenets that remain, i.e., consistency. You do what you said you was going to do. You hold your word true. But on the same token, dealing with our youth in particular in the school system requires us to be at the forefront of attacking some challenges. Because, of course, they're going to tell you that your children are not disciplined in school, although they're well at home. However, because of the nuances in school and who their teacher is, don't get me into my dissertation right now. I'm not going to do that. But in terms of being indoctrinated, in terms of your child being pinpointed or picked on by adults, we have to combat that as adults in the home. Whoever the authority is, and authority doesn't always come with an iron fist. Take it from somebody with girls. I've had to become all things to all people, and I have a sophomore, junior in college, and I have a rising fifth grader. So sometimes that discipline requires conversations. Sometimes it requires removal of things. But all in all, love is the background of what discipline is. And you know you want the end goal of your child or the youth being disciplined throughout their life because they will reach the goals that they set for themselves.
See, Mr. Adams, you kind of trampled into, man, my next question right there because you said that L word, love, as well too. Because I know many of us who are of age, we remember the statement that if I don't beat you, I don't love you, and it was something that you said earlier as well too when you were discussing the fact that discipline looks different 20, 30 years ago than it does now.
Mhm. Yeah, it does. Why? Because removal of an electronic device is worse than any belt could be. The rod of correction has changed. It was somebody who told me something years ago in raising my children that said, if every time you did something wrong, God physically beat you, where do you think you would be? The beatings come by you because what you want is to learn a lesson, not this, the pain from a whip. Now, sometimes corporal punishment is necessary. Remove an electronic device and see if you don't get the ultimate end goal.
I wouldn't disagree with that, sir. I wouldn't disagree with that, man. That's definitely an insightful point. All right, Dr. Peck, Mr. Adams, Dr. Hatch, considering the sayings, spare the rod, spoil the child, which shape many of our upbringings, today's children are products of their generation's discipline, as Mr. Adams just alluded to. What's your take on why discipline seems to be less prevalent among today's youth compared to our upbringing? Dr. Hack, you want to go first? Mr. Adams, Dr. Pack,
Yeah,
which one want to jump off on this?
I will say I think that time teaches us a lot of stuff, and not just for children. I think we have to be very mindful that the concept that you have to physically and emotionally break someone in order to teach them a lesson we have learned is problematic. How many of us now have very interesting relationships as adults with our parents that probably was impacted by some of the beatings? There are many of us, I will tell you, I'm a 38-year-old man with a PhD. I work in health and human services, and I will tell you, there are still moments I remember my father beating me, and I can't tell you why.
Mm-hmm.
I can't tell you the lesson I learned. I can only tell you that I still have a visceral fear of him in certain spaces. I still struggle to process disappointment. I still struggle to communicate some things from that 8-year-old who got beat. Now, did I straighten up? Absolutely. Did I do what I was supposed to do? Yeah. And did I get beat again for that issue? I probably did. But the reality of it is, I think when you know better, you have to make the choice to do better. I think that, and Mr. Adams, soon to be Dr. Adams, hit on that. We know better now. We
Mm-hmm.
know that everyone does not respond well to physical abuse and discipline. We know that everyone does not respond to maybe even having a cell phone taken away. Different things are for different people, but this concept that you are spoiling your child, you are giving them the easy route if you do not physically hit them. And I too am a man of faith, and I think he hit Mr. Adams hit on it verbatim. If God or whomever what you believe in, or the universe or the stars, if the world punished you physically every time you made a mistake, what would that look like?
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, and I've had to do some work with that myself. I understand just what you're saying, Dr. Hatch. I've had to come to a point for my own mental health to release my parents from that place. They operated in only what they knew. Those baby boomers only knew physical violence. That's all that that generation before them gave, and God knows the one before that did. That's a whole nother conversation for another day. However, at the end of the day, they only use the tool that they had. That does not relinquish. I'm not signifying violence against anyone, but I've had to release that. But in that, I've also had to grow to say, how am I going to get the optimal effect with my children? Because that don't work. I have literally a 5-year old who is 52. Literally. If she sees you up in the morning and you tight or whatever, and sometimes you get up and you just start moving and going, she has literally in the car said, "All right, Dad, you good now? Let's start again. Good morning." That's what I'm working with. And that you can't beat that.
Mm-hmm.
That's not a beating. That is rationalizing. That is, and here's the other thing, as Dr. Bush alluded to, as it applies to the youth, things have to make sense. We were beat before asking questions out of civility's sake. You don't ask a grown person a question. That things have to make sense. They have the world at their fingertips. Who are we to deny that to get the goal of stop you from being bad? It ain't being bad. It is answering a question. This is why this doesn't happen. At first, we looked at this when we were kids like only our counterparts could do that because we sure can't ask these questions to these people that say, because I said so. It didn't work. But it has to make sense. And that plays out. Now, the punishment again, like you said, the cell phone or whatever, I don't know what it is. You got to pray about it in terms of getting the goal. And sometimes allow life itself to be the disciplinarian.
Yeah, because disciplining your child is teaching them the responsibility and letting them know that what they're doing, there are consequences to them not adhering to the rules, there are consequences, and they have to understand that. And when they don't adhere to the rule, the consequences can be overwhelming for them,
Mm-hmm.
you know. And when the ultimate aim is for to encourage your children to learn and to manage both their feelings and their behavior.
Yes, ma'am.
So when children are disciplined, you can tell when children are disciplined. You can tell it's a reflection of the parents when children are disciplined. And my sons, I have two sons, they're 33 and 28. And to this day, I mean, I was the softie. My husband, he was on them. But they would call him and say, Dad, I understand why you did this or why you did that. Because they're going through it with their own children. You know, we didn't do this just for the heck of it. We were teaching you this. This is discipline. This is how we are going to teach you to contribute to society and not be a menace to society. So discipline comes from the home. It's self-control. Is self-discipline, and it starts with you. It has to start with you.
All right, guest panel. All right, now I got to be the contrarian out of all of this.
Mm-mm.
Some would say when we look at privatized prisons and the prevalence of them now, the prevalence of crime in our communities, some would say that, man, the lack of discipline or the lack of beatings has contributed to the blights on society that we have right now today. Now, I'm not one to say that as a correlation to causality, but it does bring the question: is it because that we have become more or identified this soft parenting era of why we have some of the atrocities that we have in our society today?
Negative. Negative. I think
Okay.
we all know that. When people go back to that whole crabs in the barrel. Well, crabs ain't supposed to be in the barrel. That's not their natural habitat.
Mhm.
How? So you see our people put in systems that are already broken. What do you think the end goal is going to be? Yes, there's not discipline in some of these homes, but there's also not discipline in our counterparts' home. It does not end up prison to pipeline though. There's a difference. We as a people, a lot of us are in bad predicaments. What we're not addressing is poverty. What we're not addressing is the lack of basic needs that can cause mental illness
Mhm.
that pervades the generation to come. If you are operating in survival, things are going to happen. I'm not making excuses for anybody. Some people make bad decisions, and some parents don't teach or train. But at the same token, if you don't have the tools to be able to teach or train, if you don't have the environment set for them to be trained in a good environment, what do you think is going to happen? That's me. I'm going to shut up, Doctor Hatch.
I will just say that, you know, my grandmother used to have a saying. Said she would say, "Keep living,"
Hmm.
and keep living meant a couple things. You may have a perspective at 23. Keep living.
Mhm.
Life will show you. Life can kick you in the butt better than anybody else can.
Yes, it
And
can.
we also know that for people who are of multiple stigmatized identities and people who have been kissed by God's son longer than others, do not get the same allowances to fail, make mistake, and try again.
Mhm.
They don't. I think everyone on this call has grown up hearing that you have to be twice as good to get half as much. And the reality of it is, even in 2024, that the world does not give everyone a second chance. And so, unfortunately, if you do not get it right at some point, sometimes the world punishes you in a way that is not fair, in a way that is hard to come up from. And unfortunately, we know that there are so many systems that have been put place that to make sure we don't get up after the first time, they give us heavier weight to make sure when we do fall, we can't get up. And unfortunately, the prison system and the justice system is one of those things. I think we are being very simplistic to think that the rate of physical abuse
Mhm.
and family structure are playing a role in the prison pipeline, having conversations on people not having books in classrooms, having conversations about overcrowded classrooms, having conversations about different societal norms, conversations on healthcare, conversations on educational access, conversations on food insecurity and homelessness. All those things playing a role in the things that people do in order to survive. All of us become the people we are in order to survive. And unfortunately, people do things in order to survive that lead them in the prison system and put them in a place where it's hard for them to come out. But I think that we can't think that, Monte is serving 10 years because his daddy did not beat him.
Or he wasn't there,
Or he
which
wasn't
is a
there.
misnomer.
Exactly. The studies show that, how many times do we have to know that you do not have to have an ideal parent structure?
Mhm.
The studies have been proven multiple times. You need to have someone who loves and cares about you.
Mhm.
The demographics, the structure of that love and care don't have to look like a Norman Rockwell picture in order for you to come out and be productive.
That's right.
Exactly. The structure of a family has changed so much.
Mhm.
I mean, up to where we are now, even in the military, you know, I've, it just, it baffled me when I first came in the military to hear just because I went in the military, I was 18, 19, 20 years old. And just to hear people say, oh no, I don't have, my father's not with me, or my mother's not with me, or I don't have any brothers or sisters. I can't even imagine not having that support system. I have 7 sisters and 6 brothers. So I can't even imagine that. What do you mean you don't have any brothers or sisters? Everybody has brothers or sisters because I didn't grow up like that. So that kind of, the military is a family,
Mhm.
and to have that kind of family with you, and when you retire, it's a whole different dynamic when you go back home to when you did not have a family of different cultures, different skin colors, and everything. So the military to me is a family all by itself, and it brings you so many different perspectives on how a family looks and the different types of people within your family. So that discipline comes from everywhere when you're in the military, and you learn so much about the different dynamics of the discipline within a household when you're in the military. Hmm.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, I mean, man, that's some great insight right there. Dr. O has put in a question. She said, is it safe to say that discipline is a conversation that falls by the wayside? The points of view I am hearing can directly affect it, right or wrong.
It's safe to say that this one is a caution that falls by the wayside. The point here comes directly affected.
I think our initial conversation has been that number one, we have to kind of deconstruct and reframe what discipline is and what that looks like.
Okay.
And
True.
so I do not. I'm laughing because when Dr. Pack was talking about the 7 sisters and brothers, I'm an only child, only grandchild.
Mm-hmm.
So it's always been just me,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so the discipline that came with that was somewhere along the way, my parents instilled in me that it's always going to be just me.
Mm.
So if I don't govern myself and self
Mhm.
monitor myself, there's no one that's going to come rescue me but me.
Mhm.
And I think that when we have conversations about discipline, be it the noun or the verb, I think we have to be mindful that we have to deconstruct the word. We have to deconstruct how we think about disciplining a child. We have to think about, I work in an HR kind of DEI space. I think about the disciplinary process and the fact that people who look like me and the others on this call go through the disciplinary action process in jobs 3 times as much as our white male counterparts.
Mm.
And it's so interesting that we have conversations about discipline. We talk about the prison pipeline
Mm-hmm.
that has an overwhelming rate of disciplinary actions that take place with Black men. And guess what? It's happening in the workplace.
Mm.
Black men who have the trades, the skills, the degrees, the jobs are going through the same disciplinary pipeline process be them in jail or be them in the corporate boardroom.
Yeah.
That same visceral attack is still there. And so we have to ask ourselves what that looks like for our people is contextualized by your experience too.
Mhm.
And I think we can't forget that. And so I don't think it necessarily falls by the wayside. I think we have to realize that it looks so different for everybody and it's so highly individualized based off of where you are in the world and what your life, what your lived experiences may be.
Yeah.
Dr. Hatch, quit trying to pull me back into my dissertation. And it begins early, the indoctrination of racism amongst black youth. It begins early. The all of what you said in terms of disciplinary actions that applies to our youth. They are adulterized, meaning that they are judged as if they were older than who they are. Early. Look at who is teaching them. That little Zaytan is a problem. He needs to be disciplined. He needs suspension. He needs it. It starts early there. So the question really is how do we counteract those, I mean, for lack of better words, demonization in the school system early? How do we then build them up? See, discipline don't fall to the wayside. Ain't nobody going in their house. Trust me, I don't believe by and large number kids go home and start writing with crayon on the wall. I don't think nobody is making dirty. Let your parent come home and there is dirt in the floor, or the couch pillows
Mm.
are thrown, or somebody's broken a TV. By and large, we as a people don't operate like that. I'm not saying it don't happen. There's anomalies, and there is it to all things. Some things fall outside the bell curve. But at the end of the day, there's one line of discipline and or structure that parents, black parents, are providing, and then there's another system that they have to live up to early at the age of freaking 5, 6, 7.
Huh.
And then we have to combat that because that discipline also takes away from their esteem.
Huh. Huh. Great conversation. Great conversation. Dr. Pack, I'm going to pick on you real quick because we're talking about discipline. Before I move on to my next segment, did you notice that there's sometimes maybe a discipline, a difference in discipline from young black girls to young black boys?
Oh, yes. Yes, I saw that right in my household.
Speak on that, sister.
So, my father did not let, okay. So, it was my three sisters. It was me, my other two sisters. We're like in the step sisters. So, I'm 15, 16, 17. So, we didn't go out. When we went out, it was 11 o'clock. But when my brothers went out, it was be back home, get back home. We had a time limit placed on us, but
Mhm.
they didn't have a time limit placed on them. And of course, it was always, Daddy, that's not fair. That's not fair. But in their discipline for girls and discipline for boys are always different. Even when it comes to punishment,
Mm.
it's always different. And I don't even want to say the kind of punishment we had when we were growing up, but it is definitely different. And yes, we were definitely punished different, and our discipline was different in the house. But we still knew that our parents loved us. We still knew that they disciplined us again so that we could not, so that we would be productive members of the society. And to this day, um, my brothers and sisters, we I can tell that I can tell from the way we grew up, and we're still close.
Mhm.
All of us are still close, and I don't even think we live 200 miles from each other.
Mm.
Either in any direction. We're still within 200 miles of each other right now, all of us, except one brother. But
Dr. Pack,
we're still close.
Dr. Pack, give me one more minute. Let's go a little bit deeper. What were some of the detailed differences in the discipline. Maybe not in your house, but
Oh,
at the neighbor's house or the folks on the corner's house. What were some of the differences between young black boys and young black girls that you saw? That it's like, wow, because I think that that can give us a little bit more insight to what are happening in some of these homes and some of the not disparities, but the dissonance that we have today.
mm. So, mm, well, I lived in the country, so everyone around me was family.
Mhm.
So the most that I would see is coming into the house. You know, when the light came on, you know you're supposed to be in the house. And of course, we had to be in the house, and the boys usually stayed outside, which were usually my uncles or my brothers. But other than that, everything else happened within the house. So I don't really know what happened within the houses except in my house.
Gotcha.
See what I'm saying? So, and then I left home when I was 18 and I went in the military. So,
I got you, sister.
yeah,
I got you, sister.
gone after that.
Now, ladies and gentlemen, let's get in a little bit of controversy. Speaking of discipline and roles, there's a saying that the black man is the head of the household. Crickets. Responsible for disciplining his children. Some historical beliefs even suggest that he had to discipline his wife. Also in 2022, there were about 4.15 million black families in the United States with a single mother, which is an increase from the 1990 levels, when there was about 3.4 million black families with a single mother. About 25% of all black households are maintained by a woman without a spouse, making them the most likely group to be a family household maintained by a woman without a spouse. So, if so many households are single female headed, right? How is the black man the head of the household and providing discipline? Or how do you view the evolution of these beliefs? And what do you believe is the role of the black man today in terms of self discipline and disciplining in his family?
I have a real short response because I am not anyone's father or spouse. But I want to say that, a lot of times the things we believe are because of religious beliefs. The concept of man being household is a deeply religious concept. And so I think that sometimes we need to realize and call a thing and recognize that some of the stuff we believe is because of some religiosity, and some of the practices we have even in family structures are because of religiosity
Hold
when it
up, Doctor.
comes
Hold
to
up, Doctor Hess. The Black Church Convention is not going to come get me. No, I'm just messing with you, man. I just
no, but and it's very real. And I think that we, I will say I'm also an ordained clergy person, and I love how people pick and choose which part of the Bible that you want to stick to that we're gonna keep
Yeah.
through 2024. We ain't kept some of them other principles, but we love to keep the man's head of the household. Well, here's the
Yeah.
thing: recognize where that comes from. Number one. Also recognize that your current contextualization may change what that looks like, but I think we put a lot of weight, a lot of blame, and a lot of guilt on the concept of single black motherhood. And I think we have to be very honest about that. But at the same time, I think we also need to understand why we do some of the things we do. And I do know that the concept of man being head of house, man being in charge of house, wife, and kids does have that Christian biblical undertone and basis for why we do it in 2024. Now
And
Yes.
I'm gonna let those who are married and those who have kids be the
I,
add to
I,
it.
Yes.
I feel something from Mr. Adams is bubbling in his spirit though. But go ahead,
yeah,
Mr. Adams.
I mean, listen,
Yeah.
uh, it's a partnership round here. There are some things that are my response. I'm not saying that I'm just a man's responsibility. I'm talking about with children. There's some stuff I don't get in. There's some stuff I get way in. It is a partnership, and I think if you go and Dr. Hatch brought it up, we're gonna go biblical. I'm also ordained as well, and I have to come against foolishness regularly. At the end of the day, it's a partnership between the two. love her as God loved the church, and wives submit. But that submit, we ain't gonna go into that. But if you look it up, those words mean something. It's not just, that this person is, come and bow down and submit. No, I'm not saying that. There's some things ultimately now. There are some things are my decision, and I'm gonna have to own it. But that's because we've come to an agreement together. Now, in terms of uh, uh, a single woman running a household, I believe that it can work. Statistics show it. It can work. Just like there are some single men who are raising children. We're not going against that. If we want to go spooky, that's jumping out the window. At the end of the day, we have children to be raised.
Mm-hmm.
So if we're going to jump off into religiosity, what where will that lead them because of some of those false beliefs? Some of those false beliefs. Dr. Pack.
So I do believe, Dr. Henderson, Dr. Hatch, you are, yeah, it does come from the church because that's, excuse me, that's how I was brought up. My father was the head of the house. What he says goes. But me and my sisters, we always try to change his mind, and we usually get it our way. But what he does say, it goes. But being how the family functions begins with being disciplined within the family, and the chaos, disrespect, unruliness that was not tolerated in our house. That my father did not go for that at all. And these behaviors that suggest that happens within the house teaches the family that you cannot be disciplined and tolerate when children are unruly like that. So my father was the head of the household, and we were in church every Sunday. Even when we were teenagers and living under his roof, he would say, "You go out at night on Saturday, you will be in church Sunday morning." That was the rule. I mean, even if he didn't say it, we already knew it. So he was the head of our household, and that's how we lived until we were out of his house. Okay. So now I am married now. I'm not completely under that rule now as head of the household with my husband and everything, but we do discipline our children when they were within our household, and it has worked out, but now we're empty nesters. So I feel that the head of the household, as long as they're disciplined, there can be one parent, two parent, as long as there's discipline in the house, the head of the household can be either a one parent household or a two parent household.
Fellas, Dr. Packman, she already gave us a example and a diagram of how she was disciplined when it came down to it. What say you, Dr. Hatch, and what say you, Mr. Adams? I mean, did you guys have similar situations about going out on Saturday night and going to church on Sunday morning, or how was that?
I grew up in the church. And I used to joke that there was no escaping church for me because if I stayed with my mom's mom, you went to church all the time. If I stayed with my dad's parents, you went to church all the time. I remember being 15, 16, screaming, I ain't never going to church when I get grown. And 20 years later, here I am, an ordained clergy person who is prepared to go to church conference next week. I think, though, one of the things was I think my father disciplined me the way he was disciplined. And I think that, and it was so interesting when you were discussing the gender differences and what discipline may look like. My father's thing was always that the world is harsh for Black men.
Mm.
And he was hyper aware and overly conscious that if he allowed certain behaviors, I would think the world would allow certain behaviors. And his thought was that it is better for him to punish me at 11 than the world to punish me at 30.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the way he was raised. Now, I think there's value in that. I think that I have accomplished a lot in life, and I'm thankful for some of the discipline, not necessarily the punitive whoopings, but not beatings, but whoopings. But I also think there is something to that whole, do as I say, not as I do,
Do.
old school way of thinking. And it kind of reminds me of the story where there's the woman who cuts the cake every time she bakes it, right? She cuts the cake. And she asked her mother why she cut the cake. And the mother said, well, my mama cut the cake. And the grandmother said, well, I cut the cake because I didn't have a dish big enough for the cake. How many of us were raised, are raising, were engaged, are engaging because someone was experienced that themselves and not necessarily another reason for behind it? And I think that's something we need to be able to name and claim. But as a whole, I had very strict parents, absolutely strict parents. I tell people there was a reason I had a PhD by 30 because I was told you get one chance in life, Brian. You get one chance. You better do it right the first time. There will be no second chances. And so I think that that has played a role in how I engage. If and when I ever have kids, I will. I'm not gonna lie. I think there's some of that stuff I would pass down. Now, some of that stuff I wouldn't. I don't think I would do the syllable beatings. Y'all know the didn't I tell you not
Don't
to?
do
I
that.
wouldn't do that.
Don't do that.
I would not do that because y'all can see I'm still traumatized 30 years later.
I see.
But
I know it, player.
but there are certain things that I do think would be passed down, but I would need to tell my kids why they're passed down. I'm not doing this just to do it. I'm doing it for a reason.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with you, Dr. Hatch. Ours wasn't the cake, it was spaghetti. Why you breaking the spaghetti to put in the pot? And at some point, I just started asking everybody, why are we breaking the spaghetti to put in the pot? And finally, 2 generations back, because they didn't have a pot big enough. Well, shoot, we got big pots now, player. What are we doing? But we still continue on in those patterns, and that is not a good thing. Also, the do as I say, not as I do, does not work with this generation who are smarter and slower at the same time. That makes no sense. It has to make sense to them. And look, it needs to make sense to you. So who are you to deprive that of them? Um, don't break spaghetti. But I think that what you raised was very good points, and that whole beating, just everything was a beating. That's done because it's not going to work. We're going to punish not hard enough. It's definitely going to punish hard enough. So good, very good points.
Dr. Hatch, stay right there. Stay right there. So you are very insightful regarding race, cultures, generational, et cetera, that kind of thing. So I got a question for you. Discipline is often viewed through a different cultural lens or different cultural lenses. In the context of black men, how do you think historical injustices and systemic challenges have influenced their perceptions and practice of discipline today?
I think from the time our ancestors got off the first boats,
Mm-hmm.
they were disciplined and beat into submission.
Mm-hmm.
And grandfathers saw fathers, saw sons, sons saw fathers, saw grandfathers. And this beat into submission, obedience being something that is to be bought and sold. And the reality of it is, once again, when you are a person that society has stigmatized due to your identity, when you are a person that has been historically marginalized, the ability for you to snap back from mistake looks different. How many times do we know the young white man who catches a marijuana possession charge in college, and 10 years from there, he's a corporate banker? 20 years from there, he is over the medical board. How many young black men catch a weed charge their freshman year and lose their scholarship, lose their ability to play the sport that gets them in college, sent back home, go to the hourly wage job that allows them to work there because they have the charge? They did not have the parent who could pay the lawyer, the attorney. They had a public defender who saw them just as another black man case. And so think about all those different things of what it looks like. I think our families, our parents, our mothers, our fathers, those people, aunts, uncles, those people who love us and have been committed by God to care for us while we're on this earth, know that the world is not kind to us. And in some place, I do believe they think that disciplining a child, showing certain aggression towards a child, or some type of damage or some type of relationship is going to help prepare that child for the real world. Because unfortunately, we live in a world that does not give second chances to us. And so we can't separate the fact that look at the cultures of people who tend to lean towards a certain type of discipline. Ethnic minority lines have a very clear line. And I'm going to tell you the other one, socioeconomics. Because we know, regardless of your race in America, if you are of a certain educational attainment, socioeconomical level, the world is also unkind. And so when we have conversations about what discipline looks like, we can't take away those sociocultural, racial, ethnic factors that make us engage the way we engage. And so I think that the unfortunate part is absolutely disciplining someone and teaching them to have self-discipline, that's necessary across the board. We all have to govern ourselves accordingly. We also have to recognize, though, many of us have been taught to govern ourselves in a hyper awareness that everyone doesn't have to deal with. When I want to go take a walk, real talk, I don't go take a walk in my mother's golf course community. Why don't I do that? Because I'm a large 6'4" frame Black man walking, sweating in a white neighborhood on a golf course community. Why do I think that? Because what happens? Someone may say, there's a large Black man walking up and down the street. They may call a cop. I may not have a wallet. I may end up in a jail cell for walking in my mother's golf course community. So what do? I drive 20 minutes across town to walk in a Black neighborhood or a Black park, because that's one less thing I have to worry about. And so imagine the self-discipline it takes when you are a part of an identity that you know is going to be attacked. Think about how we're not allowed to think certain things. Think about all that stuff. And so it all stems from what we experienced in slavery. We saw obedience being beaten into us. So what do? We're not going to do what's going to get us beat. And then we're going to beat each other in order for you not to do something that's going to get you beat. And 500 years later, we're still doing it.
So, Dr. Hatch, we're not trying to jump out the window, but the truth is this that is hardly ever articulated. We don't know how to be because we have to keep changing to adapt to a vicious, aggressive world. That's what's not discussed enough. We always are ever adapting. I wear the clothes I wear to not be pinpointed. Let's be honest.
Absolutely.
My closet looks a certain way. It's cold. I want to put on a hoodie. I got plenty of them, but I'm only going certain places in my hoodie. And I'm only going certain places and with certain colors on. Whole nother conversation. We are ever adapting. And every systemic place we go into, we have to adapt to be less than. I read a study that talked about how and why, particularly Black mothers dumb down their children. When asked about their children, they said, he's going good, but he can be doing so much better. He's doing well. And so you would attribute that to saying, well, they're not validating their children. That's not why they do it. They talk like that because culture and history has taught us if we talk down about our children, they won't take them and sell them off. So historically, that's how we've been acculturated to be. We want to brag about our children, but we don't, because we don't want nobody to say we're putting a target on that child's back. So we're adapting in that space. We're adapting Black men in so many spaces. The kind of education and wisdom that sits even in this group cannot be at the forefront in certain meetings. There are some meetings we're deliberately quiet in. Now, some meetings I don't care. It's the Holy Ghost. You do what you want to do with it. I could really care less. But then there are some where I'm like, I better not say that there because that can be assumed. I can't just be free thought. We're talking about disciplining our children, but we don't have a playbook because it's ever changing. Our parents don't even have the words to articulate why they did what they did. Dr. Hatch articulated that well. Well, I'm teaching you about a cruel world. That's all they had in their arsenal. Yeah, there were some that were drunks. They anesthetized their own pain. Fine. They abused children. All of that. Now we're here, smarter and wiser, and we still don't know what to do and how to get our children together because we have to keep telling them to be chameleons and keep changing their color of the skin. Unless you're on the basketball course. That's a whole different set of circumstances. Or if it's in an environment where black children are okay. What about in academic spaces? What about on a golf course? What about on a tennis court? We're forever having to, let me pray. I don't know. Because we don't know. We have to keep adapting. We have to keep adapting.
Dr. Pack, I'm gonna leave that for you. I know you got something burning. You've been quiet for a little bit now.
I was enjoying it. and you do. You run back to, we're gonna have to pray about this. We're gonna have to pray about this. That's what we say. And it goes back to my husband having to tell my sons what to do while they're driving. Why you got to tell my sons what to do while they're driving? And like Mr. Adams said, they have to adapt to where we are now in 2024, in 2023, 2022, because it was bad back then with black men driving, and my son, he was a part of a traveling baseball clinic up and down the East Coast. And he was the only black boy driving those huge SUVs. And I just started crying. My husband didn't even know why I was crying. I said, if my son gets pulled over in one of these SUVs, he's the only black boy with all these other white guys, who's going to stand up for my son? Okay? It's like 20 of them. Who's going to stand up for my son if something jumps off, if he gets pulled over in one of these black SUVs? You're right. It is ever so changing. And our counterparts do not understand this. They do not. And when it was so bad with the black men getting shot with driving, I was talking to someone at one of the offices a couple of years ago, and I was just telling her I worry every time I can't see my son, or if I don't hear from him in a couple of days. And she said, yeah, I worry about my sons too when I don't know where they are. You don't worry about your son like I worry about my son. Okay? It's a whole different type of worry. Okay? Because you don't tell your son what I have to tell my son. And I didn't want to get ugly with her. But yeah, it's a whole different type of discipline black children have to have. Because again, they have to change with the flow. They have to change their colors. It's like a chameleon. Like you said, Mr. Adam, it's a chameleon. But yeah, and it shouldn't be like that. It should not be like that. But here we are, the world we live in.
Yeah. And in spaces that they are collected, including academia. I thank the Lord, at times I don't have black sons. I have black daughters. However, daughters was going to a decent college, university. There were shootings. And we know the profile of the person shooting, walking around with an AR-15. I'm following up with a North Carolina institution to say, hey, what's going on? What are updates? And it happened 3 times. Y'all didn't even know that. Wasn't on the news. Why? That university is congregated with a lot of children of color. Children of color. It is what it is. Now here you go. You've done everything. Okay, I'm here now. You've done everything as a parent that you possibly could. You've sent them to decent schools. You've get tutoring. You have gone the extra mile in soccer and baseball and basketball practice. Your child did pretty well in school. Your child goes off to college. You think that your job is decently done, and yet the color of their skin still dictates how it is systematized in that area.
How they move through society. Color of
But
the
you
skin.
talking about discipline? They are. They made it here. Yeah.
Man, it's almost to the point, man. I don't want to go, but I know we got to get ready to get on out of here. So I want to say first and foremost, from Let's Have Manversation, thank you, Dr. Pack, Mr. Adams, and Dr. Hatch. And to our viewers, remember to connect with our panelists to learn more about their work and how they can support us on themselves as well on their journeys. Now, any final thoughts, Mr. Adams, Dr. Pack, Dr. Hatch? What say ye?
I would just say self discipline. Self discipline is within you. You have the power to reach your goals and achieve unlimited success. Thank you.
All right. Mr. Adams?
I would say discipline. It entails what you do consistently every day. It is the thing that you do. What time you wake up, what time you sleep, what time you study, what time you work. It discipline is having a goal in mind and doing everything in your power to attain it.
Mhm.
All right. Well said. Well said. Dr. Hatch?
I'm gonna take it from a different approach.
Okay.
I think that we all need to do our best to discipline ourselves, but I also think that we need to have the discipline to have more grace, be kind to ourselves, and more grace for ourselves, but also more grace for others. We're all learning, we're all living, we're all laughing, we're all learning, but we also have to extend grace to know that we're going to fall. And when you fall, we hope and pray that you have the tools, the wherewithal, and the ability to get back up and try it again.
Well said, ladies and gentlemen. Now, empowering success through discipline for the Black community. Let's Have Manversation says, join us in unlocking the power of discipline to empower success among Black men. Discipline isn't about just personal growth. It's a transformative journey that equips individuals with the tools and the mindset they need to thrive in every aspect of life. Here's how you can take action today. Engage, start, or join a group focused on personal and professional discipline. Yeah, we're talking to you. Share your experiences, mentorship, and skills to uplift others. Educate, spread awareness about the impact of discipline on success within the Black community. Host workshops, seminars, or community talks to share stories or transformation. Of transformation and growth. Once again, envision, collaborate with local leaders, organizations, educational institutions to create tailored programs that promote discipline and address specific needs within our community. Take the next step. Visit our website to learn more and get involved in empowering success through discipline. Together, let's make a difference. You guys, I had fun doing this. This was awesome. I mean, because we came at it from a different perspective. Because when Dr. Hatch and Mr. Adams they started going, and I was like, wait a minute now, Tia Martinez, the school to prison pipeline. I was like, that's my lane right now. That's in my area right there. 50% of all incarcerated have some type of substance abuse or mental health disorder. That's documented. Also, too, because of Bessel van der Kolk's, man, the body keeps a score research with the electronic microscopes that are more powerful now, shows that pain receptors not just are active during physical pain, but through other assemblies of pain as well, which can be emotional. So it's not just about us beating someone. We can cause pain in so many different ways, ladies and gentlemen. But once again, you guys take care. God bless you. Love you all dearly. And good evening.